Spain had everything: beautiful beaches, perfect weather, rich history, delicious food, wine, culture, art. And then it decided to destroy itself economically, not through war, not through revolution, not through natural disaster, through pure economic incompetence spread over 15 years. Spain looked at Greece and said, "Hold my sangria. This is not a story about bad luck. This is a story about a country that chose every single wrong option, then doubled down when those options failed spectacularly. Spain is not technically third world. It is still a developed country, technically. But the living standards, the unemployment, the brain drain, the future? Third world might be generous. This is the wealth records, where every video will change how you see money, history, and systems. If you are new here, hit subscribe because what you are about to learn is economic self-destruction. How to take one of Europe's success stories and turn it into a cautionary tale. How Spain became a third world country. Have you been to Spain? Do you know anyone who left? Drop your stories below. This is one of the most dramatic economic collapses in modern European history. Let's start with what Spain was before it decided to ruin itself. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Spain was booming. Joining the European Union changed everything. EU money poured in, infrastructure projects everywhere, high-speed trains, new airports, modern highways, bridges, buildings. Spanish cities transformed. Madrid became a global financial center. Barcelona became a tourist magnet. Valencia, Seville, Bilbao, all modernizing rapidly. Real estate was exploding. Everyone was buying property. Everyone was making money. Construction jobs everywhere. Unemployment falling. Wages rising. Spain was the European success story. The economy grew faster than Germany, France, Italy. Immigration was positive. People came to Spain for opportunity. Latin Americans, Eastern Europeans, North Africans. Spain needed workers. Spain had jobs. Everything looked perfect. And then 2008 happened. The global financial crisis hit Spain like a freight train. Actually, worse than a freight train. Like a freight train carrying other freight trains. Because Spain had built its entire economy on one thing: construction, real estate, property development, building apartments nobody needed, funded by cheap credit from European banks who assumed Spanish property would rise forever. Spoiler, it did not. When the crisis hit, construction stopped. Instantly. Cranes froze midair. Projects abandoned. Buildings half-finished. Entire neighborhoods built with nobody living in them. Ghost towns. Literal ghost towns. Spain had built cities for a future that was not coming. And when construction stopped, unemployment exploded. Spain's unemployment rate in 2007, 8%. Normal? Fine. Spain's unemployment rate in 2013, 27%. 27%, 1 in 4 adults could not find work. Youth unemployment hit 57%, 57%. More than half of young people unemployed. University graduates with engineering degrees working at Zara. If they were lucky, most were not working at all. Spain's economy collapsed. GDP shrank by 9% from peak to trough. Businesses closed by the thousands. Banks needed bailouts. The government was broke. And the European Union came knocking with a solution. Austerity, cut spending, raise taxes, balance the budget. This is what the EU demanded in exchange for bailout money. And Spain said yes. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Austerity during a recession is like dieting during a famine. It makes everything worse. Spain cut public sector wages, cut pensions, cut healthcare, cut education, raised taxes on everyone. VAT went from 16% to 21%. Income taxes rose. Property taxes rose. Everything got more expensive while people earned less. The result? The economy got worse. When you cut spending during a recession, demand collapses further. Businesses lose customers. More businesses close. More people lose jobs. Tax revenue falls even though tax rates are higher. Because you cannot tax unemployed people. Spain's debt to GDP ratio went UP despite austerity. From 40% in 2008 to 100% by 2014. Austerity failed, but the EU said keep going, so Spain kept going, cutting and cutting and cutting. Public services collapsed, hospitals understaffed, schools overcrowded, infrastructure crumbling. The welfare state was gutted, unemployment benefits ran out after 2 years. Then you got nothing. Millions of Spaniards had no job and no benefits. Families survived on grandparents' pensions. 3 generations living together because nobody could afford rent. Youth gave up. If you were 25 in Spain in 2013, you had no future, no job, no money, no hope. So they left. Brain drain started. Hundreds of thousands of young, educated Spaniards emigrated. To Germany, to the UK, to the Netherlands, to South America, doctors, engineers, scientists, all leaving. Spain educated them, other countries employed them. By 2015, over 2 million Spaniards had emigrated since the crisis. 2 million. The population actually shrank. For the first time in decades, more people left Spain than arrived. And the people leaving were the young, educated, ambitious ones. The people staying were the old, the poor, and those who could not leave. This is economic suicide. You cannot build a future when your future leaves. Spain lost an entire generation, and it has never recovered. Even now in 2026, the scars remain. Youth unemployment is still over 25%. 25%. 18 years after the crisis started, an entire generation scarred. But the youth unemployment is only part of the story. The jobs that exist are terrible. Spain became the land of temporary contracts. 60% of young workers are on temporary contracts, 6-month contracts, 3-month contracts, some 1 month. No stability, no benefits, no future. You cannot plan a life on a 3-month contract. You cannot get a mortgage. You cannot rent an apartment without a guarantor. You cannot start a family. So birth rates collapsed. Spain's birth rate in 2026, 1.1 children per woman. 1.1. You need 2.1 for replacement. Spain is dying demographically. More deaths than births every year since 2015. The population is aging rapidly. By 2050, 1 in 3 Spaniards will be over 65. 1 in 3. Who's going to pay for their pensions, their health care, the young people who left, the young people who do not have jobs? The math does not work. Spain is trapped in a demographic death spiral. Low birth rates mean fewer workers in the future. Fewer workers mean less tax revenue. Less tax revenue means the pension system collapses. Spain's pension system is already in crisis. It pays out more than it takes in. The government has to top it up from general revenue every year. By 2030, the deficit will be unsustainable. Pensions will be cut, or taxes will rise, or both. Either way, the retired and the workers both lose, and nobody's fixing it. Because fixing it requires political courage Spain does not have. Spain has had 6 different governments since 2015. 6. Political instability is the norm. Coalition governments that collapse, snap elections, gridlock. Nobody can pass major reforms. Nobody wants to tell voters the truth. The truth is, Spain is broke. Public debt is over 120% of GDP in 2026. 120%. Higher than during the crisis. All that austerity, all that suffering. Debt still went up because austerity does not work when your economy is not growing. And Spain's economy is barely growing. GDP growth in 2026, 1.4%. 1.4%. Below the EU average, below inflation. Real per capita incomes in Spain are lower in 2026 than in 2008, lower. 18 years of going backwards. The average Spanish person is poorer now than before the crisis. Wages are stagnant. Housing costs are up, food costs are up, energy costs are up. But wages? Flat. The Spanish middle class is being crushed. Home ownership among young people collapsed. In 2008, 40% of people under 35 owned homes. In 2026, 15%. 15%. Everyone rents. And rent is expensive. In Madrid and Barcelona, rent takes 50% of income for young workers. 50%. Just for a room, not even a whole apartment. A room. Young Spaniards live with parents until their 30s. Not by choice, by necessity. You cannot afford to move out. And starting a family? Forget it. Childcare costs more than rent. Daycare is 1,500 euros per month. If you earn 2,000 euros per month, how do you pay for daycare? You do not, so you do not have kids. Spain has the lowest birth rate in Europe, tied with Italy for dead last, both Mediterranean countries, both economically destroyed, both demographically dying. What a coincidence. But let's talk about what Spain did right, because surely there was something. Tourism. Spain leaned hard into tourism after the crisis. If you cannot build a functional economy, at least you can sell sunshine. Tourism became Spain's economic lifeline. By 2019, tourism was 12% of GDP, 83 million tourists per year. More tourists than Spain has people. Barcelona, Madrid, Valencia, Seville, Ibiza, the Costas, all packed. Tourism money kept the economy alive. Jobs in hotels, restaurants, bars, tour companies, all tourism. But tourism jobs are terrible jobs. Seasonal, low paid, no benefits, no career path. You cannot build an economy on serving drinks to British tourists. And then COVID happened. Lockdowns, travel bans. Tourism disappeared overnight. 0 tourists. The industry that was 12% of GDP just stopped. Spain's economy contracted 11% in 2020. 11%, one of the worst in Europe. Unemployment spiked back to 16%. All those tourism jobs? Gone. The government had to step in with furlough schemes, paying people to stay home. Debt exploded again, from 100% of GDP to 120%. And when tourism came back in 2022 and 2023, it came back wrong. Over-tourism. Too many tourists. Not enough infrastructure. Barcelona residents protesting tourists. Water shortages because hotels and tourists use all the water. Housing crisis worse because Airbnb took housing stock and turned it into tourist rentals. Locals cannot afford to live in their own cities. Barcelona has neighborhoods where locals cannot find apartments because every apartment is an Airbnb. Landlords make more money renting to tourists than to locals, so locals get priced out. Barcelona is becoming a Disneyland for tourists, and the locals are leaving. This is not sustainable, but Spain has no other plan. No industrial policy, no innovation strategy, no diversification, just tourism. And olives. Spain grows a lot of olives. Great. Meanwhile, the brain drain continues. In 2025, 50,000 Spaniards emigrated, still leaving. Doctors leave because Spanish public health care is collapsing. Nurses work 60-hour weeks for 24,000 euros per year. They go to Germany and earn 50,000 for 40 hours. Why would they stay? Engineers leave because Spanish companies do not pay well. You can earn 30,000 in Spain or 70,000 in the Netherlands. The math is simple. Scientists leave because research funding in Spain is a joke. Spain spends 1.4% of GDP on research. Germany spends 3%. Spanish universities are underfunded. Labs are outdated. PhDs are paid poverty wages. So they leave. All of them leave. Spain is training workers for other countries. This is economic insanity. You invest in education and then export the educated. Other countries benefit. Spain loses. And the tax base shrinks because the high earners leave. The people who stay are the unemployed, the low-paid, and the retired. You cannot run a country on that. Spain's tax revenue per capita is lower than the EU average because the people who would pay high taxes left. And the people who remain do not earn enough to pay much. So the government is broke. Services are cut, which makes more people want to leave. It is a doom loop, and nobody is fixing it. Spanish politicians argue about Catalonia independence, about historical memory laws, about symbolic issues, while the economy burns. Catalonia wants independence partly because they are tired of subsidizing the rest of Spain. Catalonia and Madrid generate most of Spain's wealth. Andalusia and Extremadura are economic disasters. Unemployment in Andalusia is 20%. 20%. In 2026, these regions survive on transfers from Catalonia and Madrid. Catalonia says, why should we pay for regions that refuse to reform? Madrid says, we are all Spanish. Andalusia says, we have no jobs, we need help. And nothing gets resolved. Spain is stuck, politically gridlocked, economically stagnant, demographically dying, socially fractured. The future looks bleak. By 2050, Spain's population will shrink by 5 million. The working age population will shrink by 8 million. There will not be enough workers to support the retirees. Pensions will collapse. Healthcare will collapse. The social contract will break. And Spain will be a country of old people, tourists, and empty buildings. This is not third world yet, but it is heading there. When your youth unemployment is 25% for 2 decades, you are failing. When half your young people are on temporary contracts, you are failing. When your birth rate is 1.1, you are failing. When your best and brightest emigrate, you are failing. When your only growth industry is tourism, you are failing. Spain is failing. Slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. And the tragedy is it did not have to be this way. Spain had options after 2008. It could have rejected austerity. It could have invested in industry, technology, education. It could have protected its young people. It could have reformed labor laws to reduce temporary contracts. It could have built affordable housing. It could have funded research and kept its scientists. Other countries did these things. Germany invested. Sweden invested. The Netherlands invested. They recovered. Spain cut and cut and cut and never recovered. The crisis was not Spain's fault, but the response was. And that response destroyed a generation. Spain in 2026 is a beautiful country with a broken economy. Great food, great weather, great culture, and no future. Young people know it. That is why they are leaving. That is why they are not having children. That is why they are not investing in Spain. They have given up. And when a generation gives up on their own country, that country is in trouble. Spain is in trouble. Not third world in infrastructure. The trains still run, the hospitals still function, the streets are safe, but third world in opportunity. If you are young, educated, and ambitious, Spain has nothing for you, so you leave. And Spain becomes a country of tourists, retirees, and the people who could not leave. That is not a future. That is a slow decline into irrelevance. Spain did not learn from Greece. It made the same mistakes and paid the same price. The lesson is clear. Austerity during a recession destroys economies. Cutting investment destroys the future. Ignoring young people destroys demographics. And when you destroy demographics, you destroy everything. Because a country without young people is a country without a future. Spain is learning this lesson, the hard way. And by the time the lesson is learned, it will be too late. The damage is done. The generation is lost. The future is gone. Spain had everything and threw it away. For austerity, for balanced budgets, for German approval. Was it worth it? Ask the 2 million who left. Ask the 57% of youth who were unemployed in 2013. Ask the families living on grandparents' pensions. Ask the young people who will never own a home. Ask the future that will never exist. Spain became a third world country not through poverty, but through wasted potential. And that might be worse. Hit subscribe. The Wealth Records.